In this video, I'm going to be showing you the best vibe coding tools to be using right now and why. This is not some random list of tools or tools that come from sponsors. These are the tools that I'm actually using in my daily vibe coding workflows. And I've been an agentic engineer now for over 3 years. I've watched the space evolve, and what you really need to understand is that there's no singular tool that is the best tool in all use cases. There are different areas where you should use different tools for different reasons. And I hope that you can use this video to help you understand when to use what tools, when to use which models, and how things rack up in terms of cost, performance, and when you should use what in particular tasks. The first thing that I want to talk about is CLI agents. So coding agents are something that have absolutely exploded onto the scene in 2025. And what you guys are seeing here is I'm actually using BridgeSpace, which is a product that I've built, which is an ADE, an agent development environment, which allows you to be able to manage multiple coding agents at once. And you guys can see that I have Claude Code, I have Codex, and I have Gemini. And I have max or ultra plans or pro plans to all three companies, meaning I'm spending $250 a month on Gemini, $200 a month on Claude Code, and $200 a month on ChatGPT. And you can use these coding agents with those plans. And there's a couple things that I want to talk about as it relates to each of these agents. The first being which is the best CLI agent out of all of these options, right? You have Gemini, you have Codex, and you have Claude Code. And here's the part to that. There's no best agent. You could say that overall, you can point to one. There's one clear winner that for general use cases you should use, but there isn't really a clear winner across the entire board. And I'm going to get into that real briefly here. So if I actually pull up a very interesting benchmark, it's called basically the BS bench. I'm sure that you guys have heard of this, but this is something that has just come onto the scene. And what you guys see here is this is basically a benchmark that shows you what models will accept nonsensical prompts. So you guys can see here that it says clear pushback, partial challenge, and accepted nonsense. So what this benchmark is doing is if nonsense is inputted, let's say a bad prompt or something that just doesn't make sense, right? It measures if it's going to push back or if it's just going to accept that prompt and, go along with it, right? And this is a clear issue that we have with AI today. And what I want to show you guys is that Claude models are by far at the top of this list. Look at this. You have Opus, Sonnet 4.5, Sonnet 4.6, Opus 4.5, Sonnet 4.6, and you can see that these perform very well. Particularly Sonnet 4.6 is the best model on this benchmark. But you go down to something like GPT 5.2 Codex, which isn't the latest Codex model, but it's similar to see, okay, how does GPT models, how do they perform on this, right? And what you're going to see is GPT 5.2 Codex Extra High, which is the most capable GPT model, will accept nonsense 33% of the time. And it'll only push back 39% of the time. And the point that I'm making with this, and you can make the same point with some of the Gemini models. Look at this. Gemini 3.1 Pro will only push back 31% of the time, compared with Claude models, which will be like, get that out of here. 91% of the time it's going to reject it, right? And the point that I'm making is that there's like very clear differences when you are deciding what models and what tools are the best, which are a few things. First of all, the actual capability of the underlying model. So this is actually comparing, okay, what model is Codex using? GPT 5.3 Codex Extra High. How good is that model compared with Sonnet 4.6? And then the same thing, how good, if you're gonna use Gemini, how good, how reliable, how much does that model cost? And when you kind of look at all this, a clear winner does come out, and that is Claude Code. And I'm going to show you guys why. So if I do models here, like you have the option to use Opus 4.6, Sonnet 4.6, or Haiku. Haiku is not that great. But I use Claude Code mainly in my workflow. And if we go over to my usage limits, like I have the $200 plan, and the current week, I've only used 30% of my plan. And that is because I do have plans to all these different models. So I am a super user, but I do have like pretty much unlimited limits with Claude Code in my current workflow. Like I literally have 70% left, right? So you look at this and you can say, okay, like once you have a $200 plan, you can pretty much freely use Claude Code, especially if you're using Sonnet 4.6, which is a very good model. And Claude Code does have better performance across all benchmarks when compared with like GPT 5.3 Codex or Gemini 3.1 Pro. These Claude models are like literally designed to be better at coding and agentic coding, and it's a clear winner in my point. Like in my point of view, Claude Code across the board is the general purpose coding model. With that being said, there are use cases where Codex is better than Claude Code. And I want to show you guys like a very particular example. And let's just do models, right? And I want to show you guys like the model selections that you have for Codex, right? You have GPT 5.3 Codex, right? And when you select this, you're going to get the option to do low, medium, high, or extra high. Now, if there is a very complex problem, and you're having trouble with it with Claude Code, which will happen. Claude Code is not going to be able to solve all of your problems, okay? But if you're having an issue, what I find myself doing is if it's like a really deep issue, I'll actually use Codex and I'll use extra high and I'll put it there, and Codex will be able to do a better job in reasoning, okay? It will take much longer though. So for example, if we actually pull up another benchmark, which I believe shows a really good example of this, it's the BridgeBench. So if you go to BridgeMind.ai and you take a look at BridgeBench, these are the top 3 models in BridgeBench. Sonnet 4.6, Opus 4.6, and then 5.3 Codex. But if you notice here, the latency, which is the time to actually complete the benchmark, compare Sonnet 4.6 with Codex, and what you'll see is that Sonnet 4.6 completed this in 25.4 seconds. Codex completed this in 85 seconds. So the latency or the speed of Codex is much, much slower. So you can be working on a task that could take 5 minutes inside of Sonnet that will then take literally 45 minutes inside of Codex. I literally had an issue with this, or not an issue, but I experienced this yesterday on stream with this speed issue, right? And that's like the trade-off that you're gonna see with these coding agents, is that Codex is much slower than Claude. And you want to use Codex in your workflow in different areas. For example, like it does perform better in refactoring and debugging. And I do notice this in my workflows, is that Codex is very good at deep refactors because it's able to think and reason for so long. Whereas Opus has a smaller context window, it's more expensive, and it's just not going to do as well with like super complex, in-depth code base wide refactors. Okay, Codex is going to do a much better job than Opus in that area. So that kind of begs the question of like, okay, so which one's best? So across the board, I would say Claude Code is the best coding model, coding agent, okay, because of the underlying models that are powering it, as well as other features such as subagents and agent teams. And I'm going to show you guys that briefly. And while I show you guys subagents, I'm going to show you guys another tool that you need to be using in your vibe coding workflow. And that is a text to speech or a speech to text tool. Do you guys see this BridgeVoice? So this is a product that I've built that is in the BridgeMind suite of vibe coding tools. And what I want to show you guys is how much I personally use this product. So check this out. So over the past, what is it now, like 2 weeks, I've spoken 33,000 words to BridgeVoice, and the average pace that I can go at is 175 words per minute. I type at 105 words per minute, which means by using this tool, I'm able to speak about 75% or 70% faster than I type, okay? So that's a big deal, and I'm gonna show you guys this use case. I want you to create an agent team that will be able to clean up AI slop code in the API. So watch this. So I just used this, I'm gonna drop this in, and what I'm gonna show you guys is a very interesting use case of Claude Code, which is an agent team. And this is a concept that is not in Gemini or Codex. It's only in Claude Code. And what this is your agent will be able to build a team where each team member is able to communicate with one another, and they are all able to work together to accomplish a particular task. So we're gonna let that run. I'm gonna let you guys kind of watch that as it runs. But while we're doing that, I wanna show you guys the fact that OpenAI doesn't have this feature, okay? And there are other features where, for example, it seems to me like Claude or Anthropic is kind of on the cutting edge, Whereas like Codex just built the ability for them to spawn multiple agents, right? So I can go down to Codex here and I can, let's just drop in the BridgeMind API, and I'm gonna give it, I want you to do an in-depth review of the API and identify any security vulnerabilities that you see in our application. So I'm gonna do this. Do not update any code, but output your findings to me. Launch as many subagents as you need to assist with this task. And this, I can tell you one thing for sure. This task will not complete in this video because it just takes Codex way too long to be able to actually complete tasks, which is a good thing, right? Like that's when you want to use it. So for example, in my workflow, I know, okay, I'm going to use Claude Code. It's going to be able to do this in about 5 minutes. But if there are a very complex, like deep dive that I would like to do, I'll switch over to Codex and I'll have Codex do it, and I'll just know in the back of my mind, okay, that's going to be working for about like 45 minutes, okay? Or like 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whereas, Claude would do that very quickly because, for example, if I'm just going to drop that same exact prompt into Claude, it's going to be much faster. And this is another benefit of using a voice to text tool, is that all of my prompts are saved. So we can see here, like this right here, I can just copy this prompt back in and paste it in and just do this, BridgeMind API. And again, like I'll just copy this other prompt that I gave it, which is this one, and just paste it in. And this is why you need to be using a voice to text tool. If you are a serious agentic coder, in my opinion, you need to be able to do a very good job in talking to your agents. You should not be typing to your agents because you're going to save a ton of time by using voice to text. And in my opinion, you're also going to be able to streamline your conscious to exactly what you want to do to the agent. You'll just be able to speak freely, okay? So what we can see now is this agent team has now been spun up. And what you can see is if I go down here, right, you can see that there is now a cleaner common, which is one of the agents in this agent team that was just created. You guys see another cleaner auth, how that one just popped up. So cleaner auth is another agent in this agent team in Claude Code. So these agent teams just got released like a couple weeks ago, and I've been using them. Here's another member of the team, Cleaner Core. So that's another member of the team that was just created. So you guys can see that there's now 3 members on this team as well as the main agent. And it's glitching out a little bit, but that's all right. I'll stop here in a second. There we go. So we have a main agent, a cleaner auth, a cleaner common, a cleaner core, and then a cleaner feature. One thing to note is that this will eat a lot of usage, but here is your API slop cleanup. So there are now 4 agents working in parallel. These are the agents, and these are what each agent is doing. So they're literally working together on different parts of the code base where each agent is specialized, and they can all communicate with each other. Down here, you can see that this is waiting for 6 agents. So these have now spawned, Codex has spawned multiple agents. This is gonna work for a while. And now over here, Claude Code has now spawned this as well. And the reason I'm showing this to you guys is in the context of, what are the best vibe coding tools to be working right now? I'm using this as an example, okay? Because for example, Gemini does not have the ability yet to launch multiple subagents. This is not something that Gemini has yet. And for a company like Google to not have the ability to launch multiple agents, like this is something where in the future, AI, in my opinion, is going to get more affordable. It's going to get much more powerful. And the ability to launch agent swarms is critical. Okay, and this isn't really an agent swarm, but we're getting to that point. We have 4 agents that are working together over here. This is the future. And we can look at this, and the point that I'm trying to make is Claude Code is the best vibe coding tool to be using right now, but there's other tools that you guys also need to be using to be able to maximize your vibe coding workflow. And one of those tools is what you guys are seeing right now, BridgeSpace. So if you guys are unfamiliar with agent development environments, I just want to talk about this a little bit, okay? So I'm going to go to BridgeMind.ai. This is my company. This is what BridgeMind is. And what BridgeSpace is it's an agentic development environment where you're able to manage all of your agents in different workspaces, okay? So if we go over to BridgeSpace here, this is a product that I built because this is the future, okay? You're going to be managing agents, and you need a tool to be able to access and view and organize all of your agents in the same place. And that's why I created BridgeSpace. If you guys go back to earlier videos in my Vibe Coding an App Until I Make $1 Million series, what you'll find is that I used to literally just launch like a bunch of terminals, right, on my Mac. And I created BridgeSpace because now what I can do, and this is what makes BridgeSpace such a good tool, is let's say that this one, I just am going to rename this workspace to API Slop Cleanup, okay? So we're going to name this to API Slop Cleanup. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch a new workspace where I'm going to have two terminals, okay? So I'm going to have another workspace. I want it to open up inside of the BridgeMind directory, and I want to launch one Claude agent and one Codex agent. And I'm just going to name this, let's just do UI Slop Cleanup, okay? So let's name this one UI Slop Cleanup, and I'm going to click Create. And this is now going to create a new workspace, and I'm just going to update Codex real quick because it needs to be updated. But what you guys can see here is that now we have a new workspace to work with, okay? And we just restarted Codex, but this allows you to be able to quickly and easily manage your AI agents. And there is a big need for this in today's world because you need to manage as many agents as possible, and you need to be able to manage the tasks that they're working on. And the underlying skill is you have to be an agent orchestrator. You have to understand what your agents are working on. You have to be able to give them tasks to work on. You have to understand their capabilities. And that's what makes BridgeSpace such a good vibe coding tool, is that it allows you to manage your coding agents all in the same place. So back to kind of what I was talking about with comparing Claude Code, Codex, and Gemini, is you're really looking at a couple different layers, right? You have to look at them and say, okay, well, which one actually has the best models? And by far, Claude and Claude Code Anthropic, they create the best coding models for general purpose coding. Now, there are instances where Gemini models will perform better, and that's what I want to get into. So if you look at this LM Arena leaderboard, what you can see is that literally at the top here, you have Claude Opus 4.6, and then you have Claude Sonnet 4.6, and then you have Claude Opus 4.5, and then you have GPT 5.2, and then you have Gemini 3.1 Pro, okay? And what you need to understand is there's a couple different things, right? And I want to get into the intelligence and reliability trade-off as well as the cost trade-off. And to do that, what we need to do is we need to go over to OpenRouter and we need to actually talk about the cost of these models, okay? So the first thing to do is we're going to go over to Opus 4.6 and we're going to take a look at this. So Opus 4.6, $5 and $25 per million. And you can even see the speed, 23 tokens per second. So let's now go over to GPT 5.3 Codex. If we go over here, this one, $1.75, 14. So it's more than half the cost. And while this one says that the tokens per second is faster, in real world use cases, for example, if you are using it in extra high, it's going to take much longer. Look at this one. This is a perfect example, right? So this one churned for 2 minutes, churned meaning worked, and it was able to identify all of these issues related to security vulnerabilities inside of the BridgeMind API, okay? So we have about 10 issues that we're gonna need to look at, and what we wanna do is we now want to look over here at Codex. This one is still waiting for 4 agents to finish, and it's been going for 7 minutes already. Now it's waiting for 3 agents to finish. So, what we'll see here is that Codex ultimately will actually create a better report, but Claude was able to quickly get a report for us, right? So now what I could do is now I could tell it to, I now want you to launch as many subagents as you need that will fix these vulnerabilities with best practices. So what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to go give the next prompt with BridgeVoice, and now these are going to be able to fix all of the security vulnerabilities that it just identified, right? Launching subagents. And that's why subagents are so important. Now, I told you guys that I was going to tell you about Gemini. Gemini is very, very good at UI. And if we go look at this, I want to show you guys something really interesting. So if you actually go to BridgeMind.ai, see this animation, see the UI, all of this UI was created with Gemini 3.1 Pro because Gemini has incredibly good vision capabilities. and it's a really good UI model, okay? So even this video here, this marketing video was made with Remotion, which is basically a framework to be able to create marketing videos by vibe coding. And I created this using Gemini 3.1 Pro and Remotion. So you can see that the styling is actually like pretty good here. That shows you guys the marketing, right, for BridgeMind. And everything in the website was built by Gemini 3.1 Pro, everything that you guys can see. So if we go to products, let's go over the BridgeMind MCP. Do you guys see this little animation here? All Gemini 3.1 Pro. This here, all Gemini 3.1 Pro. Another marketing video, Gemini 3.1 Pro. And I'll use Gemini models when I am updating UI because they are inherently better at UI. You can use front-end design skills in Claude Code, you can use skills, but Gemini is a better base model for creating really unique UI. So I'll always use Gemini for UI, and then I'll use Claude Code for general purpose, and then I'll use Codex for like deep dives, because you can now see that this last agent just finished. So this one's been going for 10 minutes, guys, and it's just now fixing, and it's just now closing all of the subagents, and now it's going to be able to like give me the findings, right? But look over here, Claude Code already went through the process of, launching all the agents to implement the fixes for some of the things that it found. Now, this agent over here, look at this, 70 removals across 19 files in the 6 core modules. So this agent team was able to update, look at this, Cleaner Common finished 85 removals across 23 files, waiting on the other 3 agents. So there were 85 AI slop removals. Here's all the findings from Codex about potential security vulnerabilities inside of BridgeMind. We're definitely going to want to address these. And this is what we're seeing, is that you're able to use these coding agents at scale. And the reason that I use a product like BridgeSpace is so that I can manage all of them, because the more agents that you are able to manage as an agentic engineer, the better. You will be far more capable, and as these models get better, really the underlying skill that's going to make you a very valuable individual is going to be able to be managing all of these AI agents at the same time. It's an incredibly important skill. So if I had to actually rank these and tell you guys which is the best, I would literally rank them Claude Code at number 1, Codex number 2, and Gemini at 3. And the thing is, it's hard to rank them because there are instances where, for example, Gemini is better at user interface and Claude Code is better across the board for most tasks. Codex is, you're going to get the most usage out of your ChatGPT Pro plan. If you buy a $20 ChatGPT Pro plan to be able to use Codex, you're going to get a pretty decent amount of usage from that plan. Whereas with Claude, because the models are so expensive, you're going to run through that plan faster. Same thing with Gemini. Their models are cheaper. You're going to get more usage out of them. Whereas Claude Code is a little bit more expensive. Now, the thing is that because Claude Code and Claude or Anthropic, they have the best coding models, you really do have to weigh, okay, like, do I want to use models that are a little bit worse, but I get more usage? Or do I want to just use the best model and maybe have a little bit less usage, right? That's up to you. And I think that you're going to want to experiment a little bit. But what I would say is definitely experiment with different models in different plans, because this space is evolving rapidly. And one thing that I haven't even really brought up is Cursor and other IDE tools. And what I'll show you guys is, like, let's take a look at this, okay? So if we go over to Cursor here, so Cursor is an IDE that also integrates AI as for coding agents, right? So over here, you have your coding agents on the right, you have your chat in the middle, and this has all sorts of tools and functionality that you can use that are completely different than the coding agents that I just showed you. And this is another vibe coding tool that I use in my workflow for different use cases, okay? So Cursor I use because it has agent mode, plan mode. This debug mode is incredible. This debug mode will literally like build instrumentation for logs so that you can actually pinpoint what the cause of a bug is and then fix it. And that just comes like out of the box. And it also allows you to interface with all of the models, right? So rather than, just having a Claude Code plan where you only have access to Claude models, if you have a Cursor plan, you have access to all of them, right? Now, there is a caveat to this. Cursor is inherently more expensive, and you're going to get less usage than you would if you just had a Claude Code plan, because it's like it's obviously like economics 101. Claude, Anthropic actually, are the ones, offering the model. Cursor is just integrating it with through the APIs. That's one thing to understand, is that you are not going to get as much usage. I do have the Cursor Ultra plan, and I get about $500 worth of API usage out of my $200 Cursor Ultra plan. So it's about 2.5x what you would get from the API. So Cursor, you're going to get less usage, but you do have access to all the models rather than just from that particular provider. So that's one benefit of using it. You can also do really interesting things in Cursor. I'm going to show you guys one just real briefly here. So you can actually open up a browser inside of Cursor. So if I just launch, I actually don't have this running right now, so let's see into BridgeMind UI and then run npm run dev. And what you guys are going to see is that you can actually use a browser inside of Cursor, and there's all sorts of features and functionality that come with this. Okay, so for example, here is my UI, and let's say that I needed to fix something just briefly. Let's just choose something just brief, right? Like let's drop in this banner. Let's go to a really fast model. Let's use BridgeVoice. I want you to improve the styling of this banner, make it more professional, match the BridgeMind brand and theme, and just make it better. Give it a nice little glow that is branded BridgeMind, but give it like a flowing gradient that is very professional and subtle. So let's actually, I'm going to switch, like I said, to Gemini 3.1 Pro because that is the best UI model. So I'm going to use Gemini 3.1 Pro, and this is what my workflow will look like if I'm using Cursor. Based on the task, I'll use the model that's good at that particular task, right? So because this model is good at UI, I'll use Gemini 3.1 Pro, whereas if I was doing a different task, I would probably use a different model. So Cursor is great because if you guys also saw that, you can literally highlight different sections of HTML that basically you don't even have to look at the code or go to the code. You can just say, hey, this is the HTML I'm talking about, right? And you drop that in, you select it, and it pastes in that HTML element from the browser. So that is something that is very good about Cursor, is that you do have this browser feature. You do not have this if you're just using Claude Code out of the box, okay? So Cursor allows you to do this. Another tool that is worth noting that I'm sure a lot of people are curious about or have used is Google's anti-gravity. So this is basically Google's competing product to Cursor. So if we open up the agent manager, what you guys can see here in anti-gravity is it's the same thing as Cursor, right? It's very similar, but there is a very unique workflow that I will use for anti-gravity, and that is for testing UI flows. So what we can do is I want you to use anti-gravity browser and actually walk through the onboarding flow and tell me if you see any findings of how we could improve the onboarding and sign up flow. So we're going to drop this in, and I think that I should be able to get to this. I just put it in plan mode, but one thing that's really cool is we can go here, or where is it? It's actually, it's right here. So I can click follow along with agent. And one thing that's like really interesting about this chat is like, I can choose to follow along with this agent. So if you do follow, what's going to happen is if it actually walks through the process of opening this up, opening up the UI and actually going through that flow, it literally will give the agent eyes and evaluation into how your application is running and functioning, right? So it can do screen recording, it can take action, it can go and create an account depending on if you have, Cloudflare enabled for return style and whatnot. But, this is one thing that I use for anti-gravity is you can actually use it to be able to test particular like sign up flows and stuff. And this is like, you don't have this with Cursor out of the box. Now, Cursor did just release a cloud tool that allows you to basically launch like a VM, which is very interesting. So you guys just saw this pop up like this window, right? And whoa, why did that pop? Well, this is anti-gravity working and actually going through the sign up flow. So you can see it went to my sign up page, and you guys can see it. This is actually the anti-gravity browser, and this is now going to be able to interact with this and be able to see the UI and be able to actually click it. So this is not me. So you guys can see that this is actually going to go through the process of clicking through this, and probably we'll see what it does here. But look at this, sub agent at test.com. It's then probably going to put in a password and like test this. So it's going to test my sign up flow and then be able to come back to me with its evaluation. Now, this is very early on. You know, anti-gravity has only been out. It says that agent needs my input. So let's go back over to it and see what does it need. It said submit sign up form. So it actually wants to submit this. So let's allow it to submit. But what you guys are seeing is, hey, this is something that anti-gravity has that Cursor does not have, right? And they do have this in their new cloud feature. It's just new, but Google was a little bit ahead on this one, and being able to allow the agents to be able to actually like take action. And it looks like it's now like typing in the password. I just wanted to confirm with me, so you can see that it's put in that password. Here's the confirm password going in, and this is a use case that it's like, okay, this is really nice to be able to use anti-gravity in this way, right? It's literally testing my sign-up flow. So that's just one thing briefly that I wanted to show you guys. This is something I'm using. It is going to fail because I don't have the API set up right now or hooked up. So that's going to fail, but I just wanted to show you guys that as a use case for anti-gravity, because that's a really good tool to be able to use in your vibe coding workflow, is being able to use anti-gravity to be able to do that for you. So here is the UI that was created, and really I just wanted to use Cursor to show you guys like, hey, you drop in the UI here just by the click of a button, it drops in the HTML, and then you're able to switch to whatever model that you want to be able to do whatever you want, right? So that is a really good use case for Cursor. So, you know, just to kind of summarize, okay, like if I had to rank, these are all the best coding agents, okay? And like that's the hard part, is that if you guys watch my live streams, you'll see my workflow in action, right, across like a very long period of time. And that's why I do the live streaming, is that I think, you know, it allows people to see that in action, whereas this is just a video where I'm kind of showcasing a couple things, right? But, you know, the coding agents, Claude Code is the best coding agent overall. Then Codex is up there as well. Gemini up there, but not as good. You also then have Cursor and you have anti-gravity. You also have tools like BridgeSpace, which allow you to manage all of your CLI agents in one workspace or multiple workspaces. It's very good for that. You definitely want to have an ADE in 2026. And then you also want to have a text-to-speech tool like BridgeVoice to be able to streamline your conscious to your coding agent. So with that being said, these are currently the best vibe coding tools to be using in March of 2026. This is subject to change, but what I do know is this space is evolving rapidly, and you want to get involved. You want to be on the cutting edge of this frontier, because this is the future of software development, is agentic engineering, and these are some of the tools that some of the best vibe coders and agentic engineers are using today. I will continue to share my perspective on tools and different workflows and strategies to be using for vibe coding, but this is just an overview of the best vibe coding tools to be using in March of 2026. So with that being said, I will see you guys in the future. If you haven't already liked, subscribed, and joined the Discord, make sure you do so. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the future.